Hello, welcome to another Soul Horse Sunday. I'm Delea with True North Equestrians, and my guest today is Sandra Mendelson, who is a very well-known and very accomplished, very generous woman who communicates with all sorts of animals, primarily horses. And we're going to start our conversation by letting her introduce herself and talk a little about her work, how she got into speaking for the soul of the horse.
Well, thank you for having me here, Delea. A lot of people think that if you communicate with animals, it's a gift that you've had since you were a child. I did corporate, I did a very typical 3D life, and then became certified to use light therapy and nutrition, and found myself surrounded by 65 barns. Loved horses. Mom would never let me ride. It was too far away. And so I'm like, okay, I got certified to work with polychromatic light therapy on horses for injuries. And here I was, it was -7 in the barn one day, and I'm alone with this horse in the stall, and this deep voice booms in my head, "This hay is crap." About 2 minutes later, one of the horse moms walked in and said, "There's mold all over the hay." And this same horse would eat your hand for a carrot. And he's in the, he was rehabbing. So typically the trainer or vet will administer a little bit of sedative when the horse is getting back into being ridden again. Horse won't take the carrot. There's that voice again, "Get me out of here." And a nanosecond later, the trainer came around and overdosed the horse on sedative. He's fine. And then I'd say the pivotal thing happened a couple of weeks later, where I was in another barn, and this horse would follow me in, and I'm like, oh wow, I'm like, so cool. They send me out to bring the horse back in. I must be a horse whisperer. No, horse had an agenda. So I had taken one rake class, and after I work on him with my equipment, I put up my hands, and he slams his right butt cheek against my hands, and then his left shoulder, and he said, "Why are you wasting time with all this equipment? Why don't you just run energy? The horses are waiting for you." He said, when the barn closes at 4 o'clock, we can drop the facade and be our true selves. We hear the birds speak, the plants speak, everything speaks. And it went on from there. I was convinced I made it up, came back humbled, tail between my legs, and he headbutts me out of his stall into the breezeway. And I hear, "You bought into the illusion again. We need you." Okay, so that was the beginning. Next few years, I'm like, okay, what do I do with this? And I took some animal communication courses, but it was literally like I wasn't driving the bus. And I came down to Florida, and on September 28th of 2015, that is when I got more information that blew the top of my head off. I had no idea that horses possibly could see this, know this, perceive this. I don't know, about 7 or 8 horses in one barn, and it blew open my consciousness, and it totally changed the direction of my life. I started recording all of this because I figured if I was blown away, probably somebody else might be too. And they pushed me, and they said, "Okay, this is where this is how you tune into your telepathic abilities, and you tune into anyone from anywhere." And I didn't think I could. I had no idea how to do it. And a blue whale, and a water buffalo, and a sacred cow from Mumbai came through. I'm like, "Mom!" She's like, "Relax, that's not you. You're funny, but you're not that funny, and you're smart, but you're not that wise." So the horses absolutely masterminded this total change in life direction and awakening for me. And what they have shared about them, about us, is the most humbling, magical thing I could ever imagine. And you know what? I just had nothing to unlearn because I didn't have a horse. So when I heard the horse, they didn't speak in training language. They spoke in, well, it's my left shoulder. It's, they would share information about how they live, what they're here doing that we're not aware of. We have so many misconceptions about them. And this is now 10 years that this has been going on, so there's an awful lot of information. It did give rise, after they kept pushing me, and I had 53 species that had come through correcting misconceptions. And when given the floor, the animals, I'd say about 75% of everything they say, and even more so for horses, is all how they can help us.
Right. Right.
Changing our
Yeah.
perspective to understand this ride called life and energy and I mean, wow. So that's the introduction. It gave rise to thus far 4 books, 2 for adults, the We Walk Beside You books, and 2 for children that are in rhyme. And I don't know how to say it, but whenever I feel, okay, maybe I feel cut off, all I need to do is go back to the horses. And they are so generous and kind. In fact, one horse said, I wasn't really sure where you were going with all of this, but I figure it couldn't hurt. and they revealed so much. His name's Jono. And then he's like, but there's really been a ripple effect. And that barn is like a bellwether. I even had to just look up the term bellwether just to make sure I understood what he was referring to, because it's not a word I would ever use.
Right. Right.
So the bottom line is that so much of what the horses have shared will help us awaken. That is what they're here doing. Yes, they work in, all the crazy stuff that we hear about, what they do on and off the planet. I almost feel like putting that to the side and just sticking with what everybody can get their arms around, which is what their behaviors mean, what they see in us, that will help us break out of programming and faulty beliefs and become not more like them, but more of who we really are.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting you say not more like them. From what I get when I do my readings, mostly they're there to support. The ones I do is horse and human as a partnership, and they're always there. I've had a few that weren't like that so much. They were horses that were very upset by their life. But in general, the horses are always there to support their human, whether it's to help them work through shame in their life, whether it's to help them let go of shackles in their life, blame in their life, whatever it is, it's almost always to support transformation within their human. It's just brilliant, the things that they say, and how they're there to lead their human forward into the next, what I call the next frontier, as to how we are with horse and human. So maybe you could go into a little bit more depth about some of the things that the horses say that will, if you have permission, I'm sure you do, you have a book about sharing what they have to say to their humans in the sense of soul work together, or how what their perspective, some of the information, their perspective on what soul work is to them, or how they're there to help. So trite to say evolve the planet, but that's kind of what it is. So could you share some of that?
I'm glad you said that, because the horses have been very clear about, if you will, what level they're at. In other words, they're like, yes, we've met the really wise horses in this barn, but most of us are here. We are loved, and we are still waking up. We are still learning how to work with energy. And certain people are so easy for us to be around because their hearts are open, and we don't have to keep working so hard at clearing their energy. So I'm going to share some stuff that really applies to all people on the part of horses in general. And just keep in the back of your mind, yes, they're all at different levels. Some are still working through heavy duty trauma. Some are much more evolved than others, just like us.
Right. And I use that term. I use that term a lot. Horses are just like us. And people say, well, you anthropomorphize. And it's like, I don't mean that they're just like us and they need 8 hours sleep at night. I mean, they're just like us as far as their soulful and their emotional needs. I mean, they're just as important for them to be met as it is for us. So yeah, they are just like us, and the fact that their needs are just as important as ours, and they have just as much vision, if not more than we do.
It's, I always go back to that individual thing, because I have spoken with horses that were so evolved. I literally thought I was talking to the Jesus of the horse world. I mean, he had 2 types of big draft horse, 2 types of cancer. And what he was able to do was mind blowing. The things he has shared to this day, I can't read them without crying, because they're so far beyond where I am as a little mortal. So, okay, here's just a couple of things that, okay. One thing, horses are always working with us and for us. For example, we know behaviorally how they respond to our every thought, our every mood, how sensitive they are, how they will right themselves so that we don't fall, right? They're always physically working with us. energetically, you know, Jono says, here's a good one. He's a horse. He said, there is so much beauty inside you all. We find it funny that there are so many contraptions that cover it over. And we nudge you, we push you, we try to nib out the junk. We're not being sassy or irritable, but few of you know that yet. If you think our greatest work is under saddle, we have news for you. We are working on you more than you ever dreamed, and even when you dream, because for some, that's when you're the most or the only time you are receptive, because there is still so much conscious resistance. So, when you think your horse is being mouthy, or why are they taking off your hat? It's because, as we mentioned before, your crown chakra is being blocked. They are energetically aware at all times. So they will unzip your jacket, try to take off your belt. And we just think, when they flip
They're mouthy, yeah.
they're mouthy. And that is a huge misconception. Another thing they've said, you think we're standing around doing nothing. When we hang our head in the corner of the stall and our eyes look like they're at half mast, we are traveling. A lot of them do energetic work. Some need tactile, contact with a human. They're all different, but there are some that if you want to know if a horse is clearing you, they may press their mouth against different parts of your body and then turn away and yawn, or they may do sweeping motions across your body. So they all have their ways and physically arranging themselves in sacred geometric patterns in order to move energy. If you just kind of put that at the top of your consciousness and go, okay, I know horses are always working with energy. I'm going to pay more attention to what they're doing, which is
right. But that means a lot of times we have to allow them into our space. And we were all taught early on with horses to keep your space. You don't get stepped on, so they don't knock you with their shoulder. And safety is a priority. But in order to have them work on us, we do have to let them into our personal space. And that's sometimes hard for people to give up.
Boom. I'm really glad you mentioned that. Again, something I was lucky I didn't have to unlearn. I had to, because I was doing light work, I had to obviously be aware of my feet and they're just not getting stepped on. But I think the fear thing and the rules thing went much further. And so humans keep the horses away from them when they will learn so much more and develop much more trust in their horse if they challenge it. No one's saying be stupid. The first time a horse put its mouth to my throat, I go, oh, you're really pushing it, Sandy. But you know what? She was clearing me. So you really have to pay close attention to the horse. I mean, if it's a horse that's very jittery and nervous, you're going to have a different amount of space than a horse that's calm. You start with what's easy. But I'm glad you mentioned that, because that is one of those misconceptions that we have that really keeps everything at arm's distance. So some more things that they're very, very aware of what we are subject to living in our buildings right now, meaning with tech and the energy that comes into our homes. You wouldn't expect that, but here's another horse that said, your buildings are stress factories. You must observe this because they are pumped full of energy from the world. This works against any kind of healing. If you don't think your bodies are stressed, spend a few hours at a farm and you will see things releasing, things that you didn't even know you were carrying in your field.
And that's interesting, yeah.
So that is.
So what that horse is saying, that through the internet and through picking up on everything that comes across screens, basically, we're empathically, subconsciously soaking up a lot of that.
Weird. It's being, you get outside. Another thing to notice in your horses, and I've seen this at the local barns, they feel when energies come into the barn that are less than lovely. It could come in on a dog, can come in on a delivery person or on a boarder. So before you start blaming the horse, consider what you may not be able to see with your eyes. I've spoken with a lot or listened to a lot of horses. And another thing that they know that's harder for them to communicate to us is when things are out of balance in our life. In other words, you may be having a problem with your husband and you're looking all cheery, but if you're incongruent and what you feel inside is not the facade you're putting on, your horse is very likely going to act out. And you're not putting those two things together. We always tend to think it's the animal's problem. But if not all the time, at least the overwhelming majority of the time, if you look to yourself, the most amazing awarenesses will happen that they're trying to show you. You and I can hear them, so we're fortunate that we can translate into words, but most people have to start paying attention to what a horse is doing to communicate as closely in your language as possible. So we got a lot of things the horses have shared is how they are working to change human perception. When I was asked to tune into the Santa Anita Collective, and all the horses were dropping at the racetrack, that was a hard one. I think 32 had passed in a relatively short period of months. And they said, we chose these bodies because we knew they would not withstand a long torture, that they would break down. They're trying to draw attention to the abuses that have gone on for hundreds and hundreds of years. So they are forever optimistic, even again, if we don't put two and two together. So they're working on an institutional level to draw awarenesses to what's broken.
Okay, so you're saying these horses volunteered to come to Santa Anita and go through this physical experience of breaking down to draw awareness and attention to, we need to change how this is done, which is to contribute to the entire soul of humans that work with horses and the awareness of people who may not act in a soulful or honorable manner towards horses, and especially in big money facilities. And so they volunteered for this to help bring awareness so that it would break that glass barrier between viewing them and actually understanding them as horses who are not just something, we know this, but a lot of people don't think they're anything other than just, there's something I pay for you, I give you good life, you run for me, or you jump for me. So they volunteered for that.
Exactly. Their whole thing is, look, awakening happens one person at a time. And these are not my words, these are straight from horses that I listen to. And so they say, but you cannot awaken if you are buying into mass communications. Step away from the fray, which is mass media. You can't hear your intuition. You can't hear your inner wisdom if you're constantly being fed, if you're constantly wired. The horses are always saying, step away from the fray. Here's another one. Okay. I had a few horses saying, we know it's hard for humans to believe what they can't see. So we repeat, slow down, sit with us and start noticing what we are doing around you. We are working with energy to help you. You bring us your broken energy fields and won't stay long enough for us to fix them. Because, we're like, okay, 10 minutes, I brushed you, gotta go.
Yeah, so, human doings, yeah.
Exactly. There are also incredible awarenesses of what is happening, according to the horses, in humanity right now. So in other words, they see the big picture as well as working one-on-one with a human. So here's an amazing thing that I heard recently. Yes, the surface is very grim right now on Earth. War, destruction goes on. He said, but behind the scenes and under the stage, the groundswell of new life and the new Earth is heavily underway. New regenerative technologies and healing modalities are appearing. Many humans are doing energy healing work. Many beings, both human and non-human. And hugely important is the purging of the human emotional body. There are many of you who are flushing out emotions for self and all. This is extremely tiring work, and all of you who are doing this must be commended. The animals, both domestic and wild, know about this work and will likely show up for you with extra patience, affection, and show of support. So the close-up view of what's happening with my human and how can I nudge them towards more awareness, more love, more heart space. I mean, I have a good one with that. And then what's happening on the human collective. I actually have a really good, a good one-liner from, and then I can even talk about interdimensional travel, but here we go. Okay, so this is a horse named Darwin, and he's like, when are you going to get through to people about what we really do? They need to know we're working with energy all the time, and that includes when we're in work and they're on our backs. We are processing many things at once. It's the human overthinking that exhausts me. It shuts us out. We are heart beings. I wish humans would just start telling themselves, stop thinking, stop talking. My goodness, if they did, they could then let their other parts hear and feel who we really are. So here's my advice. Mouth and brain set to off. Eyes, ears, heart, and gut, inner knowing, need to run the show. So, right, they're so aware of what it is.
Yes, and it's absolutely correct. You know, as
Actually,
humans, it's hard to turn that brain off.
It is, and sometimes it helps by turning the mouth off. I literally,
Oh, yeah, interesting, yeah.
I knew a trainer that used to put duct tape. It sounds a little abusive. He put duct tape on his students' mouths.
Interesting.
Start feeling the horse and shut this thing off and use the other senses more. You must feel this being.
Yeah.
You know, the horses have said repeatedly that we humans don't get a full foundation the way we're trained. We're trained to live here. And as you know, the conscious mind knows 1% of what's going on. So another very interesting thing, and this is a little way out, and I kind of have just held on to this. Interdimensional travel. Okay, now horses have told me that, especially, you know, during COVID, when the human collective went to fear, horses are spending more time working on the energies and having stuff pass through them. I'm going to give you a one-liner about that. And less time traveling interdimensionally, which is something that they do. You know, if humans need it, they focus their energy here. So here we go. Okay, Jonah, I lost it. He said, here we go. I'm sorry. We feel so much stuff moving through and out of humanity, not just our own lessons, but all the human programs too. We are helping in this process, raising vibration and helping humans listen to and move into their heart space. But it can be exhausting. It shows up in our bodies, which are dense, while our energy is not, as infections, aches, and pains. It's like die-off. We are processing out what has no place in the new earth that is emerging. Judgment, bitterness, resentment, fear, self-doubt, anxiety, jealousy, hatred, all of it. It is a complex role we play, committed to human growth on this plane and constantly traveling to other dimensions. So again, it's really humble because they're like, everything they do is behind the scenes. They sleep, 2 hours, 3 hours a night, and they do energy work overnight. Elephants have told me they do that. Well, that's when they travel. So we got some interdimensional travel, which really explained so much to me of why they seem to be ahead of my perception all the time. So my friend's horse, Honeybee. We do most of our traveling at night. We travel, and I don't know if I got this right. We travel to the 5th dimension, lots of activity going on there now. We go to the 6th, 7th, all the way up to the 20th dimension. Light language is spoken there. It's like traveling through a crystal prism. All the dimensions exist and are experienced simultaneously. So I said, are there beings in every dimension? And she's like, nope. Dimensions hold energies and thought forms. 4th dimension. Sacred geometric forms. 6th dimension. And then she went on, about the 11th and the 19th dimensions, because they hold ways of being. Like the 11th is reconciliation and the healing of conflict. And the 19th dimension is quantum leaping and the ability to time travel. She said, yes, all of these will eventually be brought to this plane if humans evolve and allow it and don't block it. These things are magnificent to behold, developing so beautifully. So where Earth will be heading first occurs in the other dimensions, and then over time solidifies here. So, one more, she said, the 17th dimension is regeneration and the repairing of what is broken, such as systems. So bottom line, she said, is, horses and whales and elephants all travel interdimensionally. She said, how boring it would be if we were stuck in the third plane. The changes in the awakening happen first in other dimensions, as I mentioned. We horses learn, we visit there and learn and absorb. So what we see here on Earth, we know, is just yesterday's news. It is already in the past to us. So she said, the evolution going on is magnificent. I wish I could take you with me to experience it all. But coming back to wholeness, love, connection with all is emerging. Picture Earth as you know it, shedding its outer layer. As it crumbles and falls away, the most beautiful, illuminated, and renewed globe rises, expands, and shines. This renewal is the true reality. So you and I get to see this on an individual basis. We see people doing magnificent works of the heart, their awarenesses. And the horses, they get it. They're ahead of the curve, which is why of all the people that I ever see responding online, it's the horse people that are having the most awakenings.
Interesting. Yeah, they seem to have more of this conversation than I can't imagine life without a dog, but I don't hear dog people talk so much about this as I do horse people. Okay, now let's take a moment. Why do you think that is? Do you think it's because it's their purpose, or because as human and horse, we don't have the physical control over a horse to manage them so much, so we have to negotiate with them, and that makes us a little more open? Like with our dogs, they're easier to manage, and they interact so differently. Why do you think it is that horses, it's through horses we're making the change?
I think it is a purpose thing. So I need a better way to explain the difference of what I see from my clients' pet partners in the home, like dogs and cats. And they show people what is out of balance. They will act out. I have a client yesterday where the cat started peeing on her husband's stuff. And I said, there's stuff going on, and the cats won't reveal it, right? They're not going to throw the human under the bus. They won't tell me what the issues are, but they're like, we're acting out because your husband's got an issue. Yeah, and the woman just went boom, and she put everything together. So these are animals that show us incredible love. We know dogs are about, my dog put it into words. Love is the purpose. End of story. With horses, their purpose is to partner in our awakening. I have no doubt about it.
Do you think there are some horses that are not? Meaning, are there some horses that are not here with a purpose? They're just here to enjoy the ride, per se.
I have to say, I think that's true of all beings. That's why, as I'm saying these things, I'm like, wait a minute, I need a disclaimer. Not all horses are this way. Not all people are this way, or dogs or cats. Right. See them as, yes, right? Like, some can get away with murder. They're just here for the ride. They're like, la, 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 la. And I look at some of my friends' dogs. I'm like, that's it. That's
what you see is what it is.
Absolutely.
And I come, go ahead. I come across people like that, and I'm so obsessed with purpose and with knowing what's divine and knowing the answers. I'm obsessed with it. And I know a few people that they just really care about what they're going to have at Starbucks and what purse they're going to buy and who they're going to have lunch with. And I look at them and go, do you ever have a thought deeper than that? I used to be really judgmental about that until I realized that they're just here to enjoy what the physical things that Earth provides for a physical body. That's what they're here for. They're not here for something else. And I think that animals are the same.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. I have I have heard from, another good one. So at the same barn, there's some, new boarders coming all the time, and there's some very wise horses that are there all the time. And so here's a boarder's horse named Raj, who said, I'm curious as to what you're doing and why, but I'll contribute. This is quite a place, and really loves the barn manager. I've met Honeybee and Jono, and they are very wise. Most of us, the bulk of horses who are loved, are not quite there yet, but we're not clueless either. We're somewhere in the middle, waking up like many humans. Energies affect us a lot, and we are learning to separate ourselves from constricted energies in people that we don't yet know how to release. I can relate to them because I'm not there where everything flows through me and I'm zen all the time. I'm just not. Some people are easy to be around. They're open, real, not afraid, and they feel their hearts in their chests. We are grateful for such people at this time because they allow us to take a rest and stop working with human energy constantly. Most humans need so much help. I am content to be on a path of growth, learning to work with, move, and release energy. And then apparently used to be in the show, a show horse, and said, sorry about anybody that's offended by this, the show life is just a joke. It's going backwards into darkness and I will not feed it. I just refused. And fortunately, I wasn't punished. I have a choice, unlike so many other horses. I am here to heal and grow into my role, helping other horses and humans. If humans only knew how very much we can do when given the chance. So he was just like not show. He would not compete. He just like
he was fortunate though that he wasn't punished for that.
And he knows it. He knows it. So, they're aware from the oversoul of all horses. All horses know what is done to their kind and through and over time. So the ones that are in homes where somebody will hire an animal communicator, right, a whole different vibration, they are extremely grateful. Extremely grateful. But you nailed it. I really believe that more often, if not all the time, I'm afraid to talk in absolutes, people are matched with an animal that's kind of at the level that they're at, It's just the way the core emotional wounds are the same. Tammy Phillips's work, where, you get a real fearful animal, and when you scratch the surface, you find out their human is very fearful or has been abandoned or betrayed. So it's very interesting. I mean, my dog was pretty clear when he said, we're all learning different lessons and we're different levels. So sometimes you'll meet a dog that barks and barks. And you just have to accept them and love them where they're at. So,
where they are, and try to hear what they're saying. That's a real thing for me when I have my horses at a friend's house, and there's a couple of dogs next door, and the people don't even live there half the time. They just have someone feed it. And sometimes I hear the dogs, and they're cane corso dogs. So it's always a little concern with me being that close to my horses, dogs like that. But sometimes the dogs just bark at night, and I just feel like they're crying out, is anybody there? Does anybody know I'm here? And so to me, that dog would be a dog that is more awake and notices that he doesn't have the human, that he's just treated as a dog. He's not seen as a soul or as an individual. And because I always get, as an empath, I get really upset. And when he howls, I cry because he's just, sometimes he's alone. Sometimes there's another one there. I don't know the story. The people are gone a lot. And we all have 5 acres. So I didn't like to chat over the fence very often because the houses are far apart. Houses are probably 7 or 8 acres apart. But dogs, animals that come to people that are not interested in seeing them as a soul. I think some of those animals pick well, and that works for them. But others, I think, are just crying out to be recognized and to be heard. And fortunate are the ones that their human will take steps. Like I was telling you earlier about the horse that didn't like its name and said that humans are stupid. They just assume things. They think that it's cute to do this when they really don't know anything about me at all. That horse was fortunate, and his person I did a couple of sessions with her and him, and it's changed everything with them because he finally, in fact, I've never met a horse like him. I actually went to see them in person because I had a friend there. And that horse stared at her nonstop. His intention to connect with her, I mean, he just didn't really pay attention to what was going on around him so much when we were talking. He was so focused on wanting to know her and wanting her to know him. I've never seen focus like that on a horse, but he's like me, he's obsessed with knowing things. And it's like, it actually turned to work against him because he had a life of disappointment because people did not see him as a
Yep.
soul. They saw him as a horse.
They
But he
try
finally,
so hard. They try
I
so
know,
hard. If
I
only she
know.
could just trust herself, she will understand what I'm doing. And this, the doubt in humans, my
Yeah.
dog called it a sword.
Or this dismissive
Yeah.
aspect of humans and being dismissed. I think most humans will say one of the worst things is being dismissed. And yet look at how often animals are so dismissed. Fortunately, there is this huge awakening going on. And it is interesting that I never thought about it being so obvious in the horse world until this conversation today. And I feel honored to be a part of that. And it's like, wow, this is why I'm a horse person, because this is my thing this lifetime. And it's because of what is coming. Like we were talking before the recording started, how that horses have endured so much from humans our entire lifetime. There are for centuries. And now we're at the point that we're able to see what their real purpose is about. And to think what all they've endured as war horses, as farm animals, as feed animals, and to see how they've lived and endured things just to get to the point that they can now lead us into this new frontier of spiritual awakening and spiritual connection is truly mind-boggling. Because how many of us would be able to have endured centuries of that?
Well, you know what I tell people who do look at their horses as teachers, sentient beings, whatever, partners on this journey, what you are doing for that horse's soul, because that's what goes on, is enormous. It is enormous. Most of us create, from what we have done to horses, we call soul breakages. We set them back. We create obstacles that I mean, what are we here for? Healing, soul growth, lessons, love. Right? So I want people to give themselves some credit for every ounce of, okay, I'm gonna watch, I'm gonna pay attention. That changes everything. Trust it. Get on your head and trust what you feel and start writing it down. It's between you and you. Nobody's watching.
Right.
And all of a sudden you're getting answers that require no one's teaching you this. It's you accessing your inner wisdom. And that's what the horses want more than anything.
And they're so here to support that, help bring that out. So as a word of advice to all of us, when we see our horse behaving in manners that we don't expect or being persistent in something, it's just a really nice little knock to hello, don't try to make them stop, or don't try to overtrain that out of them, but listen more. Like we were talking about the chakras, how a horse will try to do the chakra.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is a physical check. Make sure there is nothing physically wrong with them. That is always number one, and make it thorough. Because, I mean, look at what happens living in a human body, from a microbe or a virus or a stomach and a this and the neurological. I mean, there's so many things that can go on. And number two, I would pay attention simultaneously. Notice what has changed. When did this start? What's coming to the barn? I mean, we had the horses trotting around the ring, and each one of them would flip out in the southeast corner. And so I said, okay, what's going on there? And so I tuned in, and they literally showed me, it was like, this Tasmanian devil kind of energy that would spring up and split them. And one horse said, use smoke, use fire. And so we had energy healers work and basically clear out the energy, and it's utterly fine. They're all fine.
Interesting, because there's in our big arena here where I live, there's a corner where that happens. And I sometimes wonder, does the ground feel differently there, or was there a bad thing that happened there? And for some reason, the energy is lingering there. Yeah. But I did not go over and sage it, but maybe I will. Yeah,
try
it's interesting.
We corner. Flames. We used some flames too. We just like set a torch, you know what I mean? And we waved in the air. We did, and it worked. I mean, it's hard for humans to believe in what we can't see. But the horses feel it. I mean,
but that's where the information is in the unseen.
That's honestly, that's where the magic is. I mean, I've had horses. I said, how can we partner with horses to help humans? And what they said, they gave me specs on a meditation to see the hardness around people's rigid thinking dissolving, and going on and continuing overnight, and the hardness and rigidity around their hearts melting away, leaving only love, and then forgiving themselves and trusting themselves to go out into the world from a place of self-forgiveness and trust. I mean, they know that even nice people, at the core, we've got this wounding that is getting in our way of being right here. So I mean, I've got, like, I'm not planning on coming out with another book anytime soon, but there is so much that they've shared, so many awarenesses that you just kind of have to share the ones that people are ready for. I think, talking about interdimensional travel is, most people are not there yet.
Right. I did a reading with a horse one time, and she was so advanced that I really struggled kind of get in the zone, because there weren't words. It was literally just translating the energy down. And it's like, that must be one of those horses that travels there a lot, because I had a heart. It took a while to get into the place where I didn't rely on words and I just relied on energy, because and her reading was brilliant, absolutely amazing on what she had to share with her human, and so predictive of what was coming with her human. And so I understand what you're saying about some of them are so more, most horses I can hear are my own horses, but there are some that are just like people that are, I really hate hierarchy in spirit, but there are some people who have given more attention and have been more malleable in the world of spirit, and they are, I don't want to say more evolved, but I guess that's the word. They have access to more information, and horses are the same. Some horses have accessed more, and then other horses, I think, are like humans. They have the access, but they've shut down because no one listened. They didn't have an outlet for it, and it was too painful for them.
I literally, to your point, we literally had a horse, all the horses in the barn were working on her. She was so tied up to her human, who was 16 years old and started sleeping around with boys, and she wouldn't let it go. And so they were trying to teach, raise her out of that human vibration, and she wouldn't allow it. Do you know what I mean? Like, all these,
she wouldn't allow it. She was going to suffer with her human.
She was suffering with her human. She could not let go. She just got so tied up. And then comes the woo part. I mean, have they been human before? I've had enough animals, not all, that have been very vocal, and I noticed how easy it was to hear them, and that's because they've had that facility with human language before.
Oh yeah, I never thought of it that way. That makes sense. Yeah,
they remember little flashes of looking out through human eyes, so there's no translation.
And understanding how the brain works. Yes. Yeah, interesting.
No matter what you and I share, that's why I love when more and more people, like on your show, share what they get, what they've experienced, because some people go on shamanic journeys with horses. That hasn't happened with me. Nobody gets all the pieces to the jigsaw puzzle of horse consciousness and what they're doing, which is why every story matters.
Yes. Yeah,
it really does. I would love to just hear all the things that you get, because it's to me, this is the magic part of life. What happens when I close my eyes, or when that pen starts, I hear them. Of course, I'm in the bathroom a lot of the time. I'm like, really now? If they want to come through and wake me up like last night at 2 a.m, so be it. I still consider it a gift.
Yes.
They blow my mind. And they're very also aware of how we learn. So here they are sharing all these perspectives and insights, and they're like, we have metered out what we share with you, what we've shared with you so far. First, there is exposure, then repetition, then assimilation into your consciousness. We don't expect you to change overnight, neither should you. Repeat what you've learned and share over and over again to combat forgetfulness. Your world is over-informed. What you are bombarded with must be weeded out, because it is false, misleading, even detrimental. It is enough for you to focus on breath and intention and seeing the world born of love and harmony. Cut out the non-essential. Simplify your life and your habits as much as possible, so you live and breathe the creation you desired. And pay closer attention to the energy of each person you meet, so you can see how their energy, empath, affects you, but embrace every single one of them with love, compassion, and acceptance. Remember, they have all been wounded and misguided by programming just as you.
Which is a fabulous segment just right there.
Their understanding, I cry a lot.
I do too. Yes, I do too. And it's not even, they're not even talking to me, but it's so applicable to the human nature.
They speak directly to our soul without the
Yes.
garbage. And how can you not cry? It's like, it goes right into you. There is
It's so
no
genuine, and it's so genuine,
and you
so
know
authentic.
it's truth. You don't have to question it. There's no ego involved. They're not posturing. They don't want money. They'll just do feelings on them. Like, oh, I gotta go. I'm going to the barn. You know, because, it doesn't mean I don't love humans, but I am in awe of these beings. And interestingly enough, the first person that didn't get the awareness that you and I have been talking about from a spiritual awakening, but back in, was it 1670 or 1720 or something, when Gulliver's Travels was published.
You mentioned,
right? And he goes to Lilliput and Brobdingnag and Laputa, which is where he makes fun of scientists. And the very last island is the land of the Houyhnhnms, which is run by horses. And they are fair and just and clean and genteel and conscious and fair and all these other, and the beasts that smell and that steal and rob and rape and do these horrible things, those are the humans. So
very prophetic.
Yeah, it's you know, there's just so there's I guess, is there anything else? I guess I want to know, like, what you feel you'd like to hear, if I have it, you know.
Most now, this is all about how that soul. Now, this conversation was a little different. Most people talk about their personal experience with the horses, and you did some, but this one was largely you were speaking for the voices of the horses and humanity. So it was a kind of a different conversation on being all-encompassing. So a lot of information there.
It applies to any of us who are open. And like you and me, we may be very voracious about wanting to grow, and you know, then we got to talk to our ego and accept where we are. But you know, for people who, well, even if they don't have a horse, you know, they can hear this wisdom that cuts right through the garbage. I mean, I've heard stuff from a horse, and 4 months later, I heard almost the same thing come out of the mouth of the Dalai Lama, and I'm like, really? Right? Consciousness is. And they don't, again, we're talking about individuals, you know, where are they? But
right.
You know, if you get stuff from horse consciousness, which is the oversoul of all horses that horses can tap into, there's just, they say they live in a state of isness. It is, and my father on the other side even said that. So there is no duality there. There just is. There's no right, wrong, good, bad, forward, back, better, worse. Horse consciousness is, I don't know how to say it. It's just, you read it and it's, you hear the words in your head and you write them down and you're like, this is the greatest guidance I've ever received from something much higher and unknown to me, right? So people can call that God or spirit. I just think it doesn't matter where you get it. You know what I mean? Consciousness is, if you get it from horses, if you hear it in your head from guides, if you know, believe you're hearing God directly. I mean, it's very personal how people awaken. The beauty about horses is that they're right there, tangible, perceptible to all of us.
And mystical. One thing I like about horses is they draw me into the mystic, which means for me, they get me out of my thinking so much. And horses can do that for a lot of people. I think it starts for most of us with safety, to get out of your thinking. You have to be more conscious when you're with a horse. And if you don't, you're going to get hurt. It's likely you'll get hurt. But I also think that there's something about horses that is so compelling. And maybe it's that soul draw because of their purpose here to help us evolve. But there's something that just literally can take a human out of their present state of mind and bring them into something that's much more mysterious, because it is the intangible, or the space between the worlds.
Absolutely. And you know what? I like having that mystical part, because we look at the energy from a horse's heart being 5 times greater than ours. We look at all this scientific evidence. We hear their intention. We now know, oh my goodness, from hundreds and hundreds of horses, that they're always working with energy to help us. And we see it, we live with them, but there is that unknowable part, because we are not them.
Right.
And that's when they use horses for therapy or for prisoners, right? You're not sitting and shifting cheeks and analyzing, but people can see, oh, if I think this, the horse walks away from me. So, you know, they are not our mirrors, they are responders. And we need that. But again, that mystical part, you know, that's like
the intangible. Yes. The unseen, the intangible. Okay, well, I think we are about going to wind it down, but go ahead and tell people how they can find you.
Sure. There's everything on my website, from the books to how to contact me if you want an animal communication session. So it's just smendelson.com, SMENDELSON.com.
Okay, and you have Facebook?
Oh, yes.
You do social media. And I will also, I'll put these in the notes on the YouTube video, the box below. I'll put your contact, but just in case they're listening and they want to write it down.
Yes. If you just look me up on Facebook, I have 2 pages. One of them is We Walk Beside You. And the other one is Sandra.L.Mendelson. And there's channelings on there that, you know, I'm posting several times a week. And also I'm on LinkedIn, Sandra Mendelson, on Instagram. What did I forget? I think that's enough for now.
Yeah. And if you don't mind, send me those so that I don't get the spelling wrong myself, and I'll post them in the notes down below.
Oh, wonderful.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me, and it's been great. I've been reading, you know, a lot of your posts, and I think that your title, We Walk Beside You, is just so apropos. I mean, just especially for horses, you know, and humans.
I'm glad you said that, because it came from the horses. It was that very first horse that I'm standing next to him, and I hear We Walk Beside You, and I'm like, that's the title of a book, and I haven't even written it yet.
Interesting. Yeah, but you know. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm Delea with True North Equestrians. If you'd like more information about my work, or to view more of the Soul Horse Sunday conversations, you can go to my website, truenorthequestrians.com. It's an equestrians with an S. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you in the next conversation.